In 2017, a first-time development studio created a Kickstarter campaign seeking $35,000 to create a modern side-scroller inspired by the Metroid, Zelda, and Mega Man franchises, to name a few. Not only would Hollow Knight meet its Kickstarter goal, it would go on to sell over 3 million copies outside of that campaign, and cement itself as a modern classic of the Metroidvania genre. Primarily as a result of Hollow Knight's extremely resourceful speedrunning community, multiple game-breaking exploits have been discovered since its launch, with Team Cherry actively patching out as many as possible until Hollow Knight received its final patch in 2021 and development resources were shifted to working on Silksong full-time. That means the glitches that still exist on current patch aren't going anywhere, and as usual, there are a lot more still in the game today than you might expect. Born of God and Void, let's break Hollow Knight. This video is sponsored by the cross-platform, free-to-play, military MMO, War Thunder. Now I'm supposed to tell you that in War Thunder you can choose from over 2,000 different planes, helicopters, tanks, battleships, and more to pilot. But let's be honest, if you aren't going with a fighter jet, what are you even doing? Have you never been to the danger zone? War Thunder pits players into 2 teams of 16 per match, so you're going to need backup. Grab a buddy, and have Goose Watcher 6 while you shoot down opponents with nothing more than a standard mouse and keyboard or console controller. No flight stick required. This game runs in 4K, and even supports VR headsets like the Oculus and Vive to take the immersion to the next level. So if you feel the need for speed, click my link in the video description and get a ton of free rewards for trying out War Thunder. Normally when I say everything we're going to do in this video still works on current patch, what I'm talking about is fairly self-explanatory, but in the case of Hollow Knight, the phrase current patch actually refers to different versions of the game based on which platform you're playing on. While the current up-to-date version of Hollow Knight for PC, Mac, and Linux is 1.5.78, the last update for the PlayStation and Xbox port is 1.4.3.3, and the last update for the Nintendo Switch version is 1.4.3.2. The latter two likely due to the higher licensing costs of issuing game updates on consoles. While I will be performing our glitch playthrough on PlayStation for this video, I will not be performing any glitches that have not been independently tested to also work on the more up-to-date PC version. So, no matter which version of the game you own, everything you're about to see will work for you. If you've seen the any% speedrun of Hollow Knight, you'll know that even on the latest patch, the game can be finished in less than 5 minutes. This is due to a PC exclusive glitch in which you start a new game as well as loading a God Home save file at the same time by using the buttons and the mouse simultaneously. This is known as main menu storage and allows the knight to begin the game with all charms and abilities unlocked from the very start, as well as the ability to fly and pass through walls. With a glitch this powerful, speedrunners simply go straight to the final boss right away and reach the game's credits soon after. While main menu storage does still work to this day, it both requires the use of a mouse and necessitates that the player has already unlocked God Home via a previous playthrough. To me, that sort of goes against the spirit of what we do on this channel. I'm interested in the exploits that can be done on a brand new copy of the game with no other factors at play, and so for that reason, I'm considering main menu storage to be off the table for this playthrough. So even though we won't be using it today, this video would be incomplete if I didn't at least make you aware of this glitch's very relevant existence. As for us, if we want an upgrade, we'll have to earn it the old-fashioned way. Or, cheat like we usually do. With nothing but the starting nail, we have very little to work with as we make our way to Dirtmouth and through the Forgotten Crossroads, so we're forced to complete these starting areas as normal until we reach the battle with the False Knight. After knocking it down for the first time and dealing damage to its head, False Knight will go berserk, knocking down rocks from the ceiling and weakening the wall just above the exit of the boss room. At this point, the knight can break the wall and proceed forward, skipping the False Knight. This is an intended feature of the game and not a glitch, but I had to include it because I know there is at least one person watching that is losing their mind right now, never realizing that False Knight is technically an optional boss. There you go, that one person. Don't say I never did nothing for you. Immediately to the left of the boss room is the Snail Shaman that gives the knight Vengeful Spirit, our first upgrade, and a required move for many of the glitches to come. Of course, after we collect the spell, we wake up locked in the cage and are normally forced to fight our way through a maze and defeat a mini-boss in order for the shaman to release us. Alternatively, we can set up a glitch before collecting the spell and entirely skip this annoying section. First, talk to the shaman to spawn Vengeful Spirit, then walk to the very edge of the bench, stopping just as the word rest appears above it. Now attack with the nail, pressing both up and right at the same time. If you time it right, the game will register the knight as being close enough to the bench to rest, but by the time the attacking animation ends, you will be too far away from the bench for the sitting animation to play out. This is known as a delayed interaction, and you'll know you've gotten it if the word rest remains above the bench, no matter how far away you go. Finally, jump and collect Vengeful Spirit as normal. When we wake up, we will be behind the lock gate as before, but the game is still trying to put us on the bench since we have yet to properly rest. So simply tap up, and you will warp straight through the iron bars and back on the bench, in a glitch known simply as Shaman Skip. The game has no contingency for the knight having collected Vengeful Spirit without being trapped, so now if we go back and speak to the shaman, she still speaks to you as though you are within the cage, and doesn't even face the right way when talking. Oh well, her dementia is her problem, not ours, so we're free to make our way left into the Forgotten Crossroads, and use our new spell to get past the enemy blocking the entrance to Green Path. This is the area in which we first encounter Hornet, who immediately dashes away as we get close. We aren't capable of making the jump to the upper platform to chase her down until we obtain the Mothwing Cloak, the very item Hornet guards, and instead are forced to take a long winding detour deeper into Green Path to end up on the other side of the very same ledge. That is, in a normal playthrough. Through the use of what is perhaps the most well-known exploit in Hollow Knight, we can skip all of this and fight Hornet right away. First, make sure you have Soul in your gauge, jump at the very tip of the lower platform, and then at the peak of the jump, tap right, fire off 2 Vengeful Spirit casts, and hold left. This is a fairly easy technique to perform, but if you're having trouble with it, it's likely because you're mashing the cast button too quickly. Rather than spamming Vengeful Spirit, you want to press it a second time just as the animation of the first cast ends. This will keep the knight suspended in the air without losing any height, and the recoil will push him back far enough to reach the elusive platform. Now we simply proceed left, enter the fight with Hornet, the best boss in the game. If you don't like her, you're wrong. Defeat her as usual, and pick up the Mothwing Cloak, aka the ability to dash. Next, we need to backtrack out of Green Path and briefly enter Forgotten Crossroads once again, in order to enter Fungal Waste through the use of our brand new ability. We make our way down for a while until reaching Mantis Village, which normally requires fighting your way through a gauntlet of strong enemies to reach the prize at the center, which allows the knight to wall jump. However, through the use of another tricky little exploit, we can enter the village from the top instead, and grab the claw right away, circumventing most of the enemies and saving some time in the process. Meet Sporg. He sucks. This enemy lives in the ceiling and walls of Fungal Waste and launches homing explosive projectiles that chase you down and deal 2 massive damage if you're caught in the explosion. Normally these things are by far the worst part of navigating the wastes, but because the projectiles home in on the knight, we can use them to our advantage. All the way at the bottom of this room is a sheer wall with an entrance at the top. This is normally where you exit Mantis Village after collecting the Mantis Claw, and so the developers tried to make sure that it would be impossible to enter the village this way unless you already had the reward from it. If we try to jump up there from the ground, we aren't even close to reaching the entrance. But what if we did this instead? First, climb up to the top of the room and stand on this specific platform. Then drop down, dash toward the Sporg to spawn a homing projectile, then immediately dash forward again, drop straight down to the ground to lure the projectile in the proper direction, jump and nail the purple mushrooms to bounce up, getting as close to the projectile as possible without actually touching it. Next, dash forward just as the knight drops low enough to clear the ceiling of this rock formation, then shoot a fireball to delay the knight midair long enough for the projectile to get closer, and finally, nail the Sporg projectile to reset your dash, allowing you to dash forward, reaching the platform, and narrowly dodging the explosion radius at the same time. Because we use the nail to pogo off of the explosion projectile in order to reach the platform, this exploit is called Explosion Pogo. Now that we're above Mantis Village, all we have to do is drop down through the room up ahead, trigger the lever in the bottom corner, and pick up the Mantis Claw, allowing us to climb walls. Before we leave Fungal Wastes, there's one more item we need to pick up here that is equally as important as the claw. To get it, proceed forward out the main entrance of Mantis Village, then drop straight down all the way to the bottom of Fungal Wastes and make your way to the statue to pick up the single most powerful charm in all of Hollow Knight, Dashmaster. While wearing this charm, the knight has the ability to dash downward. So, yeah, what do you think about that? Pretty cool, right? You think I'm joking, but I'm honestly dead serious. For our playthrough, this charm is going to turn out to be an absolute powerhouse. But we'll get into that a bit later. The only remaining item we need to finish the game is the Dream Nail, obtained from the resting grounds to the east of Forgotten Crossroads. But as of right now, we're stuck in Fungal Wastes. Normally you'd go right from here to enter the City of Tears as the next main area of the game, but we can't do that because we never got the key from False Knight. Because we skipped him. Huh. Well, in that case, I guess we'll go west instead to unlock Queen's Station and use the Stag to escape, which works just as well. Next, head back through Forgotten Crossroads, casually commit genocide, and then visit Salubra, the Charm Merchant, to pick up anything you might want for your particular build. But you really can't go wrong with the Shaman Stone. Once again, while we technically can reach the resting grounds from where we are now, we're not really supposed to. This is meant to be the path you exit through after picking up the Dream Nail in order to access the Crossroads again. So just like with Explosion Pogo, we're going to need another exploit in order to use this exit as an entrance. Thankfully, this one's a lot easier. Another commonly known one. If you intentionally die to the enemies in this room, a Shade will spawn, holding all your Geo until you return to this spot and defeat it. Obviously, an intended mechanic of Hollow Knight. However, because the Shade is technically an enemy, you can lead it to the wall we are trying to scale, dash into it, and use the nail to bounce off the top, giving us enough height to reach the platform we were never meant to reach this early on in the game. Okay, that's great and all, but what if you're playing in Steel Soul mode where the Knight only has one life, and dying for any reason permanently deletes your save file? Well, in that case, you'll be happy to know that while Shade Skip is by far the most beginner-friendly method to reach this upper platform that leads to Resting Grounds, it is by no means the only method. Make sure you have the Dashmaster charm equipped. It's going to be a mandatory item for the rest of this video. From this moment forward, every glitch we're going to perform for the remainder of the playthrough is part of a family of glitches known as interface storage. This is a phenomenon present in lots of games that allow for complex interactions, and it's honestly large enough of a concept to be a dedicated glitch video of its own. But the gist is that you trick the game into thinking that a menu of some sort is open while maintaining full control of your character. In Hollow Knight, there are several different flavors of storage which each have unique properties, but the one we'll be using first is with the map. As you know, in this game there is a dedicated quick map button on the controller, and as long as it is held, the Knight takes a little map out with his little hands, and the map menu is overlaid on screen. However, if you double tap that button, the full map menu opens, showing all of Hollow Nest and locking the Knight out of doing anything else until the menu is closed. As it turns out, if you interrupt the opening of that menu by taking a different action between double taps of the quick map button, some very interesting things occur. For example, if in very rapid succession you press Quick Map, Quick Cast, Quick Map, the animation of the Knight casting a fireball will interrupt the opening of the map, but not finish properly, triggering a glitch known as Slowfall, in which the Knight has highly reduced gravity until hitting the ground, because the game thinks the cast animation is still playing. If you perform the same inputs so quickly that you finish all three before the fireball even has a chance to be fired, the Knight will do this little twitch animation where he begins to shoot the fireball and then stops. Next, when you turn around in the opposite direction, the fireball will fire off on its own, triggering a glitch known as Float, in which the Knight has no gravity at all. And finally, if you cross a screen transition while Float is active, the effect becomes permanent, allowing the Knight to gain height each time you press jump and walk on thin air. In fact, Float is so effective at breaking gravity, the only way to lose height again is to either find a sloped ceiling to push you down, or to dash downward using the Dashmaster charm. That's right, on the current patch of Hollow Knight, for all platforms, it is possible to deactivate gravity on a whim and fly freely through the open air, but only if you have the best charm in the game equipped. One more thing to note about using the quick map to trigger interface storage is that on the current patch of the game, it can only be attempted once per save file load. Even if you attempt to trigger the glitch and fail it, that still counts as your one attempt per load. So while learning this glitch, every time you press Quick Map, Quick Cast, Quick Map, regardless of if you triggered Float successfully or not, you will need to pause the game, quit to the main menu, and then reload your save file in order to try again. This has created the misconception online that Quick Map storage no longer works on current patch, but I can assure you it absolutely does. You probably just need to quit to the main menu and load into your game again to reactivate the potential for triggering it. Storage and its resulting glitches can be used an unlimited number of times per file, as long as you're following that quit and reload rule between attempts. Okay, where was I? Right. Now that we can just straight up fly through the air, reaching the platform leading to Resting Grounds is a slight inconvenience for us at most. Using a combination of pressing jump to gain height and dashing downward to lose it when necessary, We make our way directly to the Shrine of the Three Dreamers, triggering the cutscene that warps the knight to the Dream Realm, where we continue deeper toward the Dream Nail. Finally, when you're ready to end the float glitch, you can simply shoot a standard fireball to reactivate normal gravity and touch the ground once more. After collecting the Dream Nail, the knight will wake up back in the resting grounds. Don't mind the fact that his limp body is sliding across the floor, this is perfectly normal. We make our way to the stag station here and rest at the bench. While we could technically finish the game right now with the amount of items we've collected, we can use even more glitches to speed up that process. The next few require the Dream Gate ability, acquired by talking to the Seer here in Resting Grounds after collecting at least 900 essence. Doing that manually would take forever, so let's cheat instead. To start, back in Resting Grounds, trigger storage with the stag interface by rapidly pressing Quick Map up Quick Map. If you do it fast enough, the knight will be able to move around while the stag menu is on screen. Next, walk over to the bench in this room, warp back to Dirtmouth via the open menu, then quickly sit on the bench immediately after. This will allow you to open the inventory while the stag animation plays on screen, and as soon as it goes black, you should double tap the inventory button. Now we have multiple layers of storage active at the same time, and if you press up to interact with the stag again here, the knight will once again be able to move with the menu open, but won't be animated properly. And finally, for the last step of this glitch, take the elevator up, position the knight on the very corner of the leftmost platform, warp to Resting Grounds with the menu, which also makes the knight jump in the process, and as soon as his feet touch the ground again, hold left. This setup makes it so that the stag triggers the loading of Resting Grounds at the same time that the knight triggers the loading of Dirtmouth, which makes both areas load on top of one another, setting us up to duplicate rooms. The game is now in a very irregular, confusing state, and from here we make our way out the door to the left, then back to the right, then back to the left, over and over until the door transition suddenly takes us to a brand new room. Like I said, very confusing state. At this point, the door transition is now broken, and if we try to go back to the right, the game will automatically force us back left. As it does so, double tap the inventory button to make the knight fall and void out instead of making it back through the transition correctly. When he respawns, wait until the fourth flash, then quickly dash right and spam jump. Admittedly, this entire section is super unintuitive and difficult to follow, especially when the knight isn't even on screen for most of it, so let me show you all of that again with developer tools enabled so you can see a bit more of what's actually going on. First, we go back and forth through the transition until a new room loads. Then we attempt to go right one additional time, with the game forcing us back to the left on its own because the transition no longer works properly. As this happens, we double tap the inventory to make the knight void out, and finally we dash to the right and mash the jump button in order for the knight to wall kick off of the floor collision of the next room, forcing the loading of the room one floor above instead. Doing all of that correctly will place us here in the room with Zero, a mini-boss that can be attacked with the Dream Nail to trigger a fight with him, in order to claim an essence reward. Normally, defeating Zero only awards the knight with 100 essence, far from the 900 we need for Dreamgate. But if after defeating him you don't claim the reward right away, and instead try to leave the room to the right, you'll find that the transition is still broken, meaning that we are automatically pushed back to the left. Do this enough times and you'll realize that each time the game pushes us back left, it's loading an additional copy of the room on top of the one that's already loaded. What's worse, this duplication of rooms is not linear, it's exponential. Do this enough times and when you go back left into the room with Zero's essence reward, there will be hundreds of copies of the same room layered on top of itself. Your video is not buffering, by the way. The game is just dropping that many frames to keep from crashing. If you slowly make your way back to the essence reward to claim it with the Dream Nail, the knight will be granted 100 essence for each copy of the room that loaded, which means we get a total of... yeah, that's probably enough. Also, I have a bit of a confession to make. At the beginning of the video I said that every glitch I was going to perform still worked on the current patch and worked on all platforms. That was kind of a half-truth. While room duplication could theoretically work on every platform, it requires your source hardware to load areas fast enough that they layer instead of replacing one another. As of right now, the Nintendo Switch and very low performance PCs load new areas too slowly for room duplication to function. Because it is purely a hardware limitation that makes the glitch fail in this case, and no unique properties of the code of the Switch port itself, it's possible that were Nintendo to release some sort of Switch Pro console that allows older games to be played with faster load times, much like the PS5 can load PS4 games faster than original hardware, then room duplication might become possible on the Switch version, despite not being possible today. So although this is pure speculation on my part, I wanted to throw this in there to future-proof the video, just in case a new, more powerful Switch were to be released one day. As of right now, if you only have access to Hollow Knight on the Switch, this is unfortunately the one and only glitch that you don't have access to. Pause the game and quit out to the main menu in order to escape this mess we've created. Then after reloading, you'll be back in the last bench you used, with all of the room layering and transition breaking fixed. Now we simply make our way to the Seer, and talk to her to claim every single essence reward in the game in one fell swoop. Next, we need to defeat the 3 Dreamers, Manamon, Lurien, and Hera, in order to enter the Black Egg Temple and fight the final boss. Manamon is the closest, so why don't we start with her? To reach her, we need a way to access the eastern half of Fog Canyon, which is easier said than done. There is a path to Fog Canyon that connects to the Forgotten Crossroads, which we can access right now, but in order to use it, we would need Yzma's Tear to protect us from acid, which is about as out of the way of an upgrade as you can get. Technically speaking, we could skip Yzma's Tear by going all the way to the top of Hollow Nest with Float, entering Crystal Peak and floating over everything to collect Crystal Heart, then returning to the spot and using the Crystal Dash on the very edge of the acid pool to narrowly dash across it without falling in. But again, Crystal Peak is pretty far from where we are now, which is why I'm so happy to tell you that a new method of skipping Yzma's Tear has been discovered, and that we have everything we need to pull it off right now. And even better, that it might be the easiest glitch to perform in all of Hollow Knight. To set it up, all you need is a map and the Dream Gate ability. First, start by holding down the Dream Nail button and down in order to place a Dream Gate anywhere in the game. Then get interface storage again by rapidly pressing Quick Map, Inventory, Quick Map. This will allow the knight to move while the inventory is open. Now hold the Dream Nail button and up in order to begin warping back to the Dream Gate, and while still holding those buttons, close the inventory and open it again. Once the teleporting animation finishes, you can release Dream Nail and up, and just like that, we are suddenly invincible. Now it's as simple as dropping down, walking across the bottom of the acid pool, and making your way into Fog Canyon to reach the Teacher's Archives, home to Manamon. And yes, just as a reminder, this still works on the latest version of Hollow Knight, and on every platform. Even you, Switch. While we could go inside and fight her right now, instead I place a Dream Gate in front of the door to the Archives, and quit and reload via the pause menu in order to warp back to our last bench. I have one more glitch to show off, and it's the biggest one yet. Although the Black Egg Temple is only intended to open up once all 3 Dreamers have been killed, that's not at all how the game functions on a logical level. In order to check if the temple should be open or closed, the game checks how many Dreamers have been defeated, but not by their individual names. In other words, if we were able to perform a glitch similar to what we did with Zero, and duplicate 3 copies of a single Dreamer on top of itself, we would get full credit without having to do anything with the other 2. Also, yeah, we're talking about duplicating rooms again, so sorry Switch users, you'll have to live vicariously from them. To start off, we need to collect some soul in our gauge, and then return to the bench and resting grounds. Now we need to perform the first few steps of room duplication over again. We get storage from the stag by rapidly pressing Quick Map up Quick Map, return to the bench, warp back to Dirtmouth, rest immediately after, double tap the inventory button when the screen goes black, reopen the stag interface, and take the elevator up once more. Finally, stand on the very tip of the elevator platform, same as before, warp back to resting grounds, and hold left as soon as the knight touches the floor again to load both resting grounds and Dirtmouth on top of one another. Only this time, double tap the inventory button again as this screen goes black to continue the chain further. Now press up to interact with the stag, then immediately tap left and shoot a fireball. Doing this will allow us to use the Dream Nail while the stag menu is open. Now we hold the Dream Nail button and up to warp back to the Dream Gate we placed near Manamon, closing the stag menu as soon as it reappears on screen and before the knight reappears. Timing the closing of this menu properly will give us float, as well as the ability to walk through walls, and is mandatory for the next step. Now we have resting grounds and Fog Canyon layered on top of one another, but thankfully for us, we can still reach the entrance to the Archives, which is the only reason we came here in the first place. Now using float, we hover into the air and make our way here. As I said before, all of that setup granted us the ability to go through walls, so we press the Dream Nail button briefly to put the knight into a falling animation, and then dash downward with the Dash Master charm in order to fall straight through the floor toward Manamon and skip dealing with Umu. After falling far enough, I dash horizontally with the platform that holds Manamon's tank so that the knight has ground to walk on once more, and then wait for Quirrell to arrive to speak to him. Once he summons Monomon, we use the Dream Nail to go inside her mind, and are finally ready for the next step of the glitch. All of this so far has just been to get to her with multiple layers of rooms active. Now comes the actual duplicating. When we arrive, Monomon's dream looks super dark and the knight is completely invisible. And that's because we are both here in the dream and still in the archive standing next to Monomon's tank at the same time. And it's this fact that allows us to continue to load more copies of the dream on top of itself. First, jump into the air slightly with float, tap the Dream Nail button to trigger a falling animation, and then dash downward in order to fall into a pit and force a respawn. Since these two rooms are layered, you can think of it as though we are controlling two copies of the knight at the same time, one in the dream and one in the archives next to the tank. So as soon as the screen turns white, double tap the pause menu to regain control of the knight in the archives, press left to face Monomon's tank, and use the Dream Nail on her once more, all before the knight that is in the dream can respawn. This will trigger yet another copy of the dream to be loaded, and we repeat the process. Jump, Dream Nail, dash downward, double tap the pause menu, turn left, Dream Nail. Doing this a total of 4 times. Finally, we can make our way to the right, not worrying about the platform since we have float active anyway, and attack and absorb Monomon, or I guess I should say, the 3 Monomon, giving us credit for killing all of the dreamers right away and opening the door to the Black Egg Temple instantly. Because of how severely we've broken things to make dreamer duplication a reality, the game soft locks here, and the white screen will never go away. To escape it, pause the game and quit out to the main menu, then reload your save file in order for the knight to wake up next to Monomon's tank, with all of the glitchy behavior corrected, while still having credit for all 3 dreamers. Use the Dream Gate to warp back out of the archives, and we can now make our way left until reaching Queen's Station, to warp back to Dirtmouth and prepare for the final boss. As we make our way to the Black Egg Temple, you may be wondering how in the world we're going to defeat the Hollow Knight with the starting nail and 0 health upgrades. And if that's the case, come on class, pay attention. The Invincibility Glitch we use to pass through the acid and reach Fog Canyon is immunity to all damage, not just acid. And as long as you have a map and Dream Gate, you can use it over and over again in the same playthrough. Since we won't be taking damage anyway, I equip all of the damage dealing charms I have on me and intentionally get hit by an enemy so that I only have 1 mask left to proc Fury of the Fallen. Now, just outside of the Hollow Knight's arena, we repeat the same steps from earlier to trigger invincibility once again. Rapidly press Quick Map, Inventory Quick Map, hold the Dream Nail and up, then close and reopen inventory. Now when we step inside the boss room and release old Alice in Chains himself, well, it literally becomes impossible to lose when none of his attacks deal damage. And yes, before you ask, this works in Godhome and against the Radiants too. With what is perhaps the least challenging final boss fight of any glitch playthrough on this channel, we take our place inside the Black Egg and become the new vessel for the infection, lying in wait for the next challenger of Hollow Nest. A big thank you if you made it this far, and I hope you enjoyed the playthrough. As always on this channel, there are far too many glitches to fit them all in a single video, so feel free to share any additional ones you know of in the comments below. I'd also like to thank Hollow Knight speedrunners Python Wizard and Staxis for answering questions I had about certain glitches, and for their help in making this video as accurate as possible. If you'd like to support me in the breaking of the next game, there are links in the video description to Patreon and YouTube membership, both of which have a ton of benefits if you decide to become a supporter. I also want to thank War Thunder for helping to fund the production of this video, and the months of testing and research that went into it. Once again, if you're in the market for a free-to-play military MMO for PC, Mac, Linux, PlayStation, or Xbox, you can use my link in the video description to get bonus rewards when you download the game. Thanks for watching. More glitches are on the way.